Now I would be lying if I said that Sukuna was not looking great on this, but so does my girl Kashimo, and Gege better not waste his efforts too. All I ask is 5 chapters of straight hands. But this chapter was one of my favorite in a while. I don't usually do chapter reviews and stuff, but this needs to be talked about. And even though I gave a 10 out of 10 to a lot of the gojo fight chapters, I think this one even exceeds that. In this video, I'm going to cover the chapter, but also clear some misconceptions as well as give my opinion on some of the events. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to my channel, but only if you enjoy. With all this out the way, let's get into it. Alright, so the chapter starts exactly where we left off last chapter, with Kashimo arriving to the battlefield. But even before he can touch the ground, he notices a big lump of ice in the air. And as we all expected, it was Uraume. And I'm not gonna lie, Uraume is also looking majestic on that panel, and I love the title Ice Star. And as we could see at the end of next chapter, there was some kind of snow on the screen. It was due to Uraume and not due to some kind of symbolic thing about Gojo's death. At least I'm pretty sure it is. But right behind Uraume appears Akari and traps her in the domain expansion. Akari says that he has made a promise and thus he can't let Uraume leave. I'm assuming it's a promise that he made to Kashimo, allowing him to fight Sukuna one-on-one, which is why he needs to avoid any outside interference, which is why he's trapping Uraume. But the big lump of ice at the beginning kept falling even though Uraume got trapped. It evaporates while falling on Sukuna, and we see that it was a delivery. Uraume was delivering Yoruzu's gift to Sukuna. And we then learn that Yoruzu's gift is a replica of Sukuna's old weapon. And I think we can assume that Sukuna's weapons are gone, and this is the only weapon he will have access to because Yoruzu made a replica of it. Because I don't think there would be a need to sacrifice her life to make a weapon that he already had, if Sukuna could already have access to his old weapons. So I think we can assume that they're all gone, and even that trident that Sukuna has in that cover, I don't think he will be getting it back. But we'll have to wait and see. And what I also love is the excitement on Kashimo's face while all this is happening. Sukuna then proceeds to blast Kashimo with a lightning attack from his weapon. And I find it interesting how Sukuna always finds a way to use the same element as his opponents. Even though it only happened twice, it's still crazy that he used fire against Jogo and lightning against Kashimo. But as we all expected, since lightning is Kashimo's element, he didn't take any sort of damage from it. And I found it pretty cool how he didn't even move or flinch. He was just sitting there on the same spot ready to ask Sukuna a question. He then asked Sukuna if he was always the strongest or if he had to become the strongest. He wants to know if Sukuna was born that way, because he doesn't understand how Sukuna is able to show compassion, because he was never able to do so. Any other human just looked like a piece of dirt. But aside from saying that he doesn't know because he was an unwanted child, I still think it was a very interesting question from Kashimo's hand, because even though Sukuna is cruel most of the time, we've seen him able to show some sort of compassion or show some sort of emotion that isn't related to fighting. And Kashimo doesn't understand how it's possible if he was born as the strongest, which is why he's asking him, because if Sukuna used to be weak, he would understand the weaks even though he is strong. I've seen a lot of people say that Kashimo is trying to be ghetto and that they're not trying to see this right now. They just want to get to the fight. But I actually like this because it's an interesting question, and it's an answer that even his whole life Kashimo could not find. And even though he has to die now, he still wants that answer. But I don't think the problem is that people think that it's boring subject. A lot of people are just mad that Gojo is dead and now they just want to see chaos. I think in the future, the fact that Kashimo asked that question to Sukuna will be brought back up and would actually be treated as an interesting subject, but we'll have to see. Continuing with the chapter, Sukuna simply says that he doesn't really mind that and he just wants to fight, which excites Kashimo even more. Kashimo then dashes at Sukuna and attacks him once, which Sukuna blocks with not much effort. Kashimo then backs up and uses his curse technique, something I've been waiting for a whole year, and I know a lot of Kashimo fans have been waiting as well. The long-awaited curse technique is called Genjuko Hasaku, which is translated as Phantom-based Ember. Kashimo dashes at Sukuna and Sukuna looks very surprised. Kashimo punches Sukuna twice in his face and then hits him with some sort of blast that is shot from the mouth. Of course, Sukuna took some damage from it and simply replies, "That's a big voice." We then see a close-up on Kashimo's body being fully covered in that aura, which looks absolutely beautiful. I feel like it was worth the wait. I don't feel disappointed at all and I'm happy to see this. This technique amps Kashimo's physical stats by far, and on top of that, the breath attacks that he blasts evaporates anything on its way. But this is something that is way too strong for the body to withstand, causing Kashimo's body to break when the technique ends, which makes me think even more that Kashimo will die from his own technique and not from Sukuna. But then again, we'll have to wait and see. Kashimo then punches Sukuna once again and uses the lightning bolt that he used against Hakari and Panda, his domainless sure hit attack. And in the middle of that explosion, Sukuna starts transforming. We are then told that Sukuna was always able to switch to his original body without reverse curse technique, which would still fully heal him, but he decided to not use it until now. And I think people's interpretations about this are wrong. people think that it just means that he was holding back against Gojo. I don't think it's that simple. I think there are multiple reasons why he couldn't use this body against Gojo, at least until the very end. And for the people that will say that I'm coping for Gojo, I would like to check my channel and see how many times I was defending Sukuna when he was being called a fraud. I always think it's just better to use our brains to better understand what is being said, instead of just blatantly taking what is written and flipping it the way we want to see. Now allow me to explain. While it's fair to assume that Sukuna is stronger in his original body, Megumi's body was way more useful against somebody like Gojo. I don't think people understood that statement from Gojo well, when Gojo said that he doesn't think he would have been able to beat Sukuna without the 10 shadows. First thing first, I think Gojo was simply paying respect to him. The second reason for that is that hypothetically, Sukuna could beat Gojo without the 10 shadows. All Sukuna would have to do is figure out a way to cut space and cut Gojo. The thing is, from what we've seen, Sukuna was not able to figure that out without the 10 shadows. So based on the facts that we have, 10 shadows and Mahoraga were needed to defeat Gojo. And the same thing goes for Gojo saying that Sukuna was holding back. I think Sukuna was actually giving anything he could, but fighting Infinity, Sukuna had no way to hit Gojo with his own techniques. Basically, Sukuna was forced to hold back, because he didn't have access to his curse technique or to most of his arsenal. But Sukuna was still trying the best he could with what he had at his disposal. And I think it is fair to say that even though Infinity was Gojo's most annoying ability, I think it was also his downfall. Because if Gojo didn't have Infinity, all we'll have to do was use reverse curse technique whenever he gets sliced by Sukuna. As we've seen, he was able to use reverse curse technique against Sukuna's domain expansion. That means that even without Infinity, the slashes are not doing anything to Gojo. But Infinity pushed Sukuna so far that he was able to learn something new. He was able to learn something that would cut Gojo so fast that not even he would be able to react. And I assume the reason why Gojo wasn't able to heal is because he was already cut. I think every time Gojo was able to heal before is because he was healing right before it was fully cut. This time it was already split in half and had no way of healing. I'm not saying that without Infinity Gojo would have won. My point here is without Infinity, Sukuna might have been able to beat him with something else. I don't know that. My point here is that in this specific scenario, Infinity was the reason why Gojo lost. Another reason why Sukuna didn't use the body before. I think the transformation works as some kind of Senzubin, basically meaning that Sukuna had to wait until he was at 1 HP before he used it, at least to make it as efficient as possible. And even though it hurts to admit, it's still crazy that Gojo wasn't even able to get to his second health bar, which is why I think Gojo would have still beaten Sukuna in the Heian era unless he found another way to figure out how to beat Infinity. Because the real Sukuna doesn't have 2 health bars. Sukuna had a lot of outside help in this fight. He had Megumi's body, which basically allows him to have 2 health bars. He had Megumi's techniques that were hard counter to Gojo's technique, which is why I think that the fans are being stupid about this fight. Instead of simply looking at the facts and seeing how interesting it is, what both of them had to do in order to get to that point and things along those lines, people just care about winning debates on the internet, therefore they just gonna call somebody a fraud because he's losing or because he lost. But yeah, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. We then get the final panel with Sukuna fully transformed into his original form, which I'm not gonna lie is looking majestic, like anybody else in this chapter. In sum, I really love this chapter a lot because there was everything that I needed to see. I needed to see Yorame, and here it is. I kinda would have preferred for Yorame to get jumped and for Maki to be the main actor in that fight. I feel like it would be better for Yorame to be stronger than characters like Yuta, because the villains only have so many people on their side. And while I know they have Sukuna, still think that each of the villains individually should be stronger than each of the heroes individually, except of course Gojo and Kashimo, who are in a different tier. Next, I also wanted to see Hakari fight again, and here it is. I wanted Kashimo's technique to be interesting and beautiful, and here it is. Now all I'm waiting for is for Kashimo to actually put up a fight. All I asked for is 5 chapters of straight hands against Sukuna, and for him to die from his own technique and not from Sukuna's hands. And the last thing is not that I was expecting it or that I wanted to see it, but that was a very pleasant surprise. Sukuna's Heian-era form also looks majestic and is probably the best thing in this chapter after Kashimo's technique in my opinion. But this is due to my Kashimo bias. And the last misconception that needs to be cleared. When Sukuna said that Kashimo was extravagant and reminded him of Gojo, it didn't mean that Kashimo and Gojo are on the same level. There is a possibility that later on we learn that they are on the same level, but this is not what Sukuna's statement meant. It meant that personality-wise, the way Kashimo is acting reminds him a lot of Gojo. At least that's what I took away from that statement. Because I've seen some people trying to use this statement to say that Kashimo was as strong as Gojo, which I think is just too early to say. But as I said multiple times before, we'll have to wait and see. All this to say, if I have to take it from the top of my head, this is my favorite chapter in the series. There might be other chapters that I prefer to this one, but even though it might be because of recency bias, this one is my favorite at the moment. If you made it to this point, I appreciate you. Let me know what you thought about this chapter, what you thought about Sukuna, Yorame, Akari, or even Kashimo. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and let's get this video to 300 likes if you wanna see more chapter reviews on the channel. I'm not really a chapter review type of guy, but if that's what you wanna see, I'm willing to deliver, which is why the like goal is way higher than usual. But if you all support me on this, I will deliver on this as well. Don't forget to sub to the channel, but only if you enjoy my content. I'm trying to reach 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I believe in y'all for that. I'm also open to all sorts of criticism or video suggestions. With all this being said, I will see y'all next time. Peace.